So as you can see, this is the honorary pointy-haired boss talk. Honorary, I think, deserves air quotes there. And this is, for anyone who wonders how this kind of thing happens, it's sort of roughly like this. I'll let you guess who Tina might be. All right, so we're here for JVMLS. And in fact, I'd like to say this is one of the best kept conference secrets on the circuit. You know, this is I think, just a tremendous, tremendous conference. And the interest that we see here and the size that we see here compared with previous years, I think, gives some testimony to that. So, you know, I would say don't keep it a secret. You know, there will be videos, and I think that there's a lot of interest even from people who aren't able to be here. So please share it with them. Now, of course, I do have a little bit of a vested interest in wanting people to think this is a great conference, but my completely objective opinion is that it's wonderful. And that's because it's the hardest working conference in show business, or something like that. This is the seventh year. Seventh time we've had this, and in fact, this is the fifth year that it's been under Oracle stewardship. I have not personally been here for all of those, but most of them, so hopefully I'm a familiar face for some people. But I'm really, really pleased to be here and have the opportunity to welcome you all. During this last 5 years, we've seen a whole lot of activity. You know, basically, some of the things that we've seen a couple of major releases. We've seen a host of minor releases that have improved implementations. We've done more CPUs and security alerts than I would like to count. And I think we've now kind of reached the point where, you know, Java 5 years ago, some people were kind of predicting doom and saying this is something, you know, this is technology that is kind of on its way out. It's, you know, it's the next COBOL, whether one considers that good or bad. And I think that we are now officially in the post-legacy phase. So, you know, Java is hipster technology again. We even saw Wired comment on the second coming of Java, right? A relic. In fact, I think they even said a Clinton-era relic returns to rule the web. And, you know, so this is comical, right, on kind of a number of levels, right? On one level, you know, a Clinton era, okay, right, fine. Saying that it's on its way back, well, you know, I think most people had the feeling that Java has kind of always been there. So it's not been a question of something kind of coming back. It's more a question of something that's been entrenched, something that has had a lot of popularity, but kind of quiet popularity, no longer perhaps being considered the cool thing a few years ago, now getting to the point back where I guess Austin Powers would say it's getting its mojo back, right? You know, it's the kind of thing that, you know, many of the small companies out there that start off with something, maybe thinking they're going to develop something quickly, when they get to the point where there are problems, real problems that they need to solve, this is the technology that they turn to. Right, Java, and in fact, by extension, the JVM. So if you haven't seen this article, go and check it out. It's kind of cool. They had a bunch of quotes from some San Francisco-based startups, I think Twitter, perhaps Square as well, talking about, you know, when they got to the point where they started to have scaling issues, they turned to Java and to Scala running on the JVM as, you know, technologies that would get them there. And in fact, what we've seen is that, you know, there was this period where they had, you know, issues, and now, you know, we look at, you know, recent events, major world events, you know, in politics and even things like the World Cup, where they seem to be able to hold up really, really nicely. So I think that's kind of cool. But by the way, the thing that I find kind of most funny about this is that somebody that talks about something that used to be cool and is not, you know, like having this in Wired. Okay, anyway. All right. And there you see the DogeSpeak version of that. Okay. So Java 8. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about this. For us, you know, this has been many years of work, both the couple of years since 7 came out, and also, you know, many of the years during which we were working on things in parallel with 7. I'm happy to say that this is now out there. It's been out since March. We always expect to hear a lot when a new release comes out, and we've heard a lot. We usually expect to hear kind of a mixed bag. We've been very, very pleased at the feedback that we've gotten, which is overwhelmingly positive. It wouldn't be the world's most popular computing platform if there weren't some people who wanted to hate it for one reason or another, or maybe it's kind of the other way around. But in any event, we've seen lots and lots of very, very positive feedback, and we've also been really pleased at what we see the rate of adoption being. And I think there are a couple of reasons for this. I think there are a bunch of things in 8 that people have been waiting for a long time. I think there may be some people who didn't move to 7 as quickly because they wanted to wait and see what happened with 8. And so from the very, very unscientific figures that we've seen, it looks as if people are adopting and starting to move forward with 8, both for new projects and even moving some of their older projects over to 8 much more quickly than we expected, and we expected it to be fairly fast. I think just to compare, much more quickly than we've seen with previous major versions of Java. So a few reasons for that. As I said, lots of great features. And in fact, I would like to point out that many of the things that we've done there have come from or benefited from discussions we've had in exactly this forum over the last few years. So pat yourselves on the back. You guys all had a hand in this. Great quality and great performance. I think this is one of those things that people have come to expect. And yet, it's very, very easy when you have a reputation for being good. The only place to go is down, really, right? If you keep providing great quality and great performance, then it's like, yeah, well, that's kind of what I expect. A good reputation is very hard to get, and it's very easy to lose. So this has been a tremendous amount of work for people. One of the things I'd point out here is that, and this may not be so obvious, we've spent a great deal of time reaching out to various open source projects, and a bunch of people involved in those projects have worked with us very closely in order to make sure that the weekly early access builds that we've had all through the life of 8 are getting tested, that they're telling us early about issues that come up that they see, so that we have an opportunity to fix those so that when it comes out of the gate, we don't have issues with that. And there were a few things, we had a few bumps in the road for 7, you may recall. So I'm really pleased personally to see how smoothly it's gone for 8 in that respect. Okay, and then I'd say, a final thing here, perhaps the most important, although this is not the thing you normally think about, right? We look at products and we think about the features that are there. What we don't think about is something that's a little bit more intangible but equally important, which is the timing and predictability. So who remembers, a few years back, major releases being sort of regularly pushed out? Yeah, I see a few hands there. I think this is one of these things, right? When you are making a software product like this that everyone is looking at and wants to use, it's really, really, really important that people be able to understand what your plans are and trust in those plans, because they are making their plans based on what you say. And if they don't feel they can trust what you say, then you're not going to have any success or traction, right? So what we've tried to do over the last 5 years, both with putting the plan together for splitting up the original 7 release, delivering the 7 release when we said we would, putting out the timeline for 8, finding that there were events that happened in the world where we needed to divert a great deal of attention to working on dealing with some security issues. That affected our timelines. But what we tried to do all throughout this is to give as much predictability as we could and to sort of hold what we said we would. So, I'm very pleased with this. We did move the date for 8 once, but we moved it, I think, about 18 months before the release was actually due out. So, this is what I'm talking about of, not sort of bumping up against a release date and saying, oh, by the way, it's going to be another 6 months, and then doing that again and repeatedly. So I'm really pleased with what the group has done here. This, as you can see by this example, it doesn't mean that there's no change possible. It doesn't mean that you're going to take a date and you're going to sacrifice quality or something else in order to do it. It just means that you're planning far enough in ahead, you're thinking about what you're doing, you're providing transparency so that people can see what's going on, and building up that reputation for predictability. So I think, back to content on 8, this is another thing that we're very, very pleased with. And that's the way that we've actually been able to do a sort of conscious evolution of 3 things together, right? The JVM, the language, and the libraries. And you can imagine this is quite a complex problem, right? Because you have these things that are layers, there's interdependency. You want to get something out as quickly as you can. And yet, it is much more satisfying when we do something like this, where there are changes in the VM supporting the changes in the language. The changes in the language are being used by the libraries in a way that is both informative and lets people figure out how they maybe should use it, or takes advantage of new things like the streams APIs. And so by doing that, you have sort of a feedback loop and can make the underlying layers better as well. Now, you may have noticed we had a little bit of a early start with Invoke Dynamic in 7. There was a bunch of work to make that better based on both feedback from all of you, as well as others, as well as things that we found internally as we started working on Lambda. Now, that one in particular I think is kind of interesting, because we actually started on Invoke Dynamic based on the things that we heard here. And we weren't originally thinking of using it for Java. And what we found as we went forward with Lambda, and I'm sure Brian has, if you haven't heard him talk about it before, he may do it here, and if not, you should corner him, found that this was something that he could use in the implementation of Lambdas in order to keep performance high. And so this is really, really cool. And I think this is something that we've seen and we expect to see as we're going forward. And that's one of the reasons why we're so interested in the feedback that all of you have to give. Because we understand that languages and language evolution is something where there are a lot of commonalities. And so the things that we find that help in one circumstance may actually turn out to be really useful in others as well. So, I'm going to talk now just very briefly on this, and this is really so that you can kind of understand, how I see this from a management perspective. These are sort of the guiding principles that we use, as we're thinking of evolution of the language and the platform. So, basically, we want to make sure that the evolution of the language and the platform that we're doing is one that's conscious, right? We're not just kind of, being tugged this way or that way by whatever the trendy thing is now. But we're thinking about it, we're thinking ahead, we're planning for the long haul, right? With as many users as we have, it's very, very expensive for us to make a false step. And when I say for us, I don't just mean for, the people working on implementing Java in the JVM. I mean for the entire world and ecosystem that's using it. So, we have kind of a responsibility to make sure that we're evolving in a conscious way. And so when we do that, some of the things that we think about are, making sure that we're encouraging code that's easy to write, but more importantly, easy to read, right? Because we know that, code is read many, many times for every time it's written. And if we're lucky, we can get some help from IDEs and other tools to write the code in the first place. So writing it, not that worried, although we do want that to be easier too, but making sure that it's very, very easy and intuitive to read and easy to understand. Rewarding good code with increasing performance. So you could look at that and say, well, you write some good code and it's fast. And that's actually not what I mean. What I mean by this is having something that encourages you to write good code, which over time, as the underlying implementation of the JVM and Java improves, your code will increase in performance. And this is something that I've actually had a lot of people surprised about, although you probably shouldn't be, and come and tell me about again and again that hey, I wrote this thing a couple of years ago, and what I find is that like each time I upgrade, it just gets faster and faster. And that's kind of cool, right? Because if you think about the return on investment, somebody has gone and they've written some code, And they've taken the time to make sure that it's well-written code that's easy to understand. And what they find is that without having to lift a finger aside from updating versions, it just keeps getting better and better. And so that's quite nice. I think another thing here, compatibility. This is something that it's easy to not worry about when you're small, when you're getting started, when you don't have many users. You want to make things right, and the easy way to do that is to break compatibility. And the hard thing to do is to figure out a way of having a path forward which retains compatibility and yet is still unafraid to evolve and make things better. We'd love your feedback on how we're doing there. I think that we've had some places where there's been some pretty good progress on this front. The work done with default methods, I think, is one of the things that helps a lot. And I think there'll be other things like that as we're going forward. Setting and keeping a high bar for security. Of course, we can see what happens if one lets down the guard there. This is a world where this topic is becoming more and more important. There's a lot more focus on it. There are a lot more people out there trying to find issues. And of course, the best thing you can do is to try to make sure that they don't creep in from the beginning. So that's kind of my advice there. And then I guess finally, looking for opportunities where you can do all of this, as I said, without the application developer having to do a bunch of work themselves. All right. So why does Oracle care? I mean, we continue to make Java available gratis for free. There are a couple of reasons, and I think this is a good thing to understand, right? Because when you look at OpenJDK and you look at the number of contributors that are coming from Oracle, you can see that this is quite a sizable and substantial investment. And there are some good reasons for this. One reason is Oracle has a stack of software, which we sell to lots of enterprises out there. It generates a lot of revenue for Oracle, and it's written in Java. We're, of course, not the only ones who do that. But I like to say we have a few billion reasons per year to support Java. So anything that we do there, that makes this stack better also, tends to make Java better for everyone. We also have, quite a number. I mean, you look at a product that large, and you can imagine there are, tens of thousands of developers working on this, and so anything we can do to make them more productive actually helps Oracle's bottom line. And has a nice side effect that it makes other Java programmers out in the world more productive as well. There's another reason, which is that we also have revenue which we make directly on Java. So while you can download and use Java, according to the BCL for free, we also have a sort of productized version of this that has additional features. Those features are really targeted towards enterprises. So, we're not sort of out there going, okay, let's, get a bunch of grandmas to send us their pension money. What we're really after here is looking at the people who are gaining significant business advantage by using this and trying to give them a way to give back. It actually turns out that this works generally pretty well because most of the folks like that, the large banks, telcos, et cetera, they actually want to be buying a commercial product. They want commercial support. And they want to know that they've given you a bunch of money so they can come to you and sort of twist your arm to do the things that they think are important. So that kind of makes sense, and that's actually going quite nicely. What I would mention in this is that you guys can actually play a part in this, right? So, and why you might want to do this is because you'd like to see us succeed. You'd like to see us continue to invest in Java and more importantly in the JVM. And one of the things I'd sort of point out here is that some of the things that we do here are actually things that you may be able to take advantage of. So I'll give you kind of an example. We have a product called Mission Control, which allows you to go in and figure out what's going on in the JVM. The JVM part of it has a piece called Flight Recorder. This is like a black box for your JVM. So you can figure out what's been going on, like at the time that you crash. How did I get here? What happened in the last 20 minutes that made this happen? And so this is the kind of thing that is not only applicable to programs written in Java, but actually for anything written on the JVM. So if you're interested in hearing about that, let me know. My feeling on this is the kind of thing that you could use. You could work with us to have your customers buy it or other things like that. And it basically is something that will mean you don't have to write a bunch of stuff, but can just kind of take advantage of it. I would also point out that it's free for use in development scenarios, so you can try it easily. Okay, well, since I've talked about sort of commercial features and so on, it might be interesting for you to know, how we think about this. So I'd like to point out this is not something that's about a decision-making process in OpenJDK. This is purely from the perspective of the Java group at Oracle, how we go about making decisions about what things we want to invest in and which kinds of projects we want to contribute to. And this is really just to sort of say, we see this as something where there's sort of a technology component and there's a business component. So on the technology side, we come up with a bunch of ideas of cool things we could do. But we don't always know whether that actually solves a problem that someone has or whether it's just a cool thing you could do. And then PM, by the way, means product management. This is not project people. This is sort of business people that are supposed to have an idea of what customers are asking for. So typically the question that they ask is, well, what are customers asking for? So we have sort of regular syncs where these two groups of folks get together. And from the development side, we say, hey, here's some opportunity for a cool thing we could do. And from the product management side, they say, well, here's what customers are telling us are their pain points. And looking out into the future, we think these are going to be some of the pain points in a couple of years. And by syncing, both groups go away with a couple of important questions to look at. On the development side, the question is really, well, okay, the customers have said, oh, by the way, I should mention that there's a significant amount of overlap. It's usually probably 80 to 90% of the things we think we could do and the things that people say they need tend to be the same group of things. But the interesting one are the things where they aren't, because the developers can then go away going, I had no idea people needed this, but now that I see that that's something that people are asking for, I can think about how I could actually achieve that. Like, what's an appropriate way to do it? And on the business side, they're sort of tasked with going away and figuring out, okay, well, they could do this thing. Who could possibly use this? Which customers could I talk to and sort of figure out if we had this, would it be a solution for their problem? And this, I think, is a very, very important thing to do. And you'll find this as you go along, that many of the best ideas that we have solve problems that people didn't know they have, right? They didn't know that it was possible to do something. And instead of asking for the thing that would actually solve their problem, they asked for a Band-Aid for the current symptom, right? And so, that's kind of a cool thing, right? When you find something that is so innovative that people have not even, sort of fathomed that it might be possible. And, when you go back with the right question, saying, well, if we did this, would that be possible? If we had extremely low latency garbage collection on giant heaps, I'm looking at you, Gil. Is that something that would allow you to use, Java in front-end trading applications? There you go. Good answer. Okay, anyway, so with that note, I think we're looking towards the future. We are, as you know, we're on build. What are we on now? Build. I can't remember which build number it is on 9.23 or something like that. Anyway, fairly 24. Thank you. My data is old. But we're not only thinking about 9, right? We're looking forward past 9. We're looking at things that are more targeted towards 10, and things that will be out past 10. And so the cycles are kind of long on this. We're used to that. To some extent, we're doing everything we can to make those faster, but to some extent, there are hard problems that take time to solve. And so we're interested in talking with you guys about this. We're interested in hearing your thoughts and your feedback. We do have an update to the JET process, which I think you've probably seen, or you may have seen Mark's mail about. This is the process that we use in order to describe ideas and to initiate projects and to basically be able to track what's going on projects in OpenJDK. And so, please, if you haven't checked that out, do. I think it continues to be moving things in the direction of more transparency and make it easier for people to engage. So now what we're going to hear from next, I get to do the introduction, is Brian Getz and John Rose talking a little bit about the future, what's to come and what some of our thoughts are. And with that, I'd like to say thank you.